Sometimes it turns out that the people who seem okay, happy, and just living the life often are the ones who are most in need of help. Very ironical. Now, one morning more than 20 years ago at Maseno University in Kenya, we came back from an early lecture, one of those annoying 7 o'clock classes, and we ran into the most horrendous scene I had ever seen in my life at the time. My classmate and friend had just committed suicide in his room. I don't really remember much of the details, and maybe that's my brain's way of pushing things like that aside. I don't remember much of the details, but all I remember is that I remember this image of a very fine, very handsome young man hanging from the middle of the room on a coat hanger, one of those wire coat hangers. And the scene was truly, truly gory. And I want to gross you out by describing exactly what it was, but you can only imagine what that was. Apparently, his girlfriend had just dumped him for a mubaba, which at the time, of course, was not really unusual. We had so many young college kids dating people from outside. But his was a little complicated because I think this was his first girlfriend. Never had a girlfriend. Loved this young woman like nothing else. And to make it worse, allegedly, this young woman had just informed him that not only was she dumping him, she had just infected him with HIV. And so this young man was so devastated that he couldn't handle it. Now, many of us can only imagine what it's like for a person and possibly a parent to walk into a child who has just committed suicide. Now, fast forward many years in America, I remember just a few years ago, there were incidences. I remember two specific incidences that happened just within the Kenyan American community involving young people. These are teenagers, I suppose, who painfully made the decision to take their lives. Two different states. Now, unfortunately, today, I may be just a little vague on the details for the sake of protecting the privacy of folks involved and to minimize any trauma on people who are struggling with what I'm going to talk about. However, I will tell you as much as I can to shed some light on this dark issue that sometimes we have to confront with in diaspora. And I believe at home too, folks deal with similar things, but diaspora one feels like things have really intensified in the last decade or so. So if any of you watching us today have been impacted by suicide in any way, my heart really goes out to you, and I hope you find the peace and comfort that you need to deal with what's ahead of you. And if you're having suicidal thoughts currently, please seek help. If you live in the US, there's a number I'm posting down in the description section. Just call that number or reach out. Please, if you need help, there is help out there. Reach out. There are professionals who are trained who will help you navigate these issues. And also remember, suicide has never solved any problem. Never. So please, your life means a whole lot, not just to you, but to all of us. So seek help. Well, before we dig deeper into this not so fun topic, I want to welcome you back to Long Beach, California. Many of you already know that we go back and forth between Karateng and California. We just came back not too long ago. And so today I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes or so with you showing you what yard work looks like for me. This is stuff that has been waiting for me since I left. And what's actually interesting is that in Karateng, I don't have to do any of this work. And technically in California, I don't have to, but it's nice to just come and clean my backyard by myself. So anyway, we've been back in Long Beach, California for some time. We were in Karateng for a few months, but we anticipate going back to the village shortly in a couple of days or so. So if you're new, if you're a guest to our channel, we thank you sincerely for being a part of our journey. And we hope you'll come back to watch our content. I'm a Kenyan American who is working my way back to the village permanently. In doing so, I help diasporans with the issues of construction. I connect them with experts in real estate, builders, architects, and things like that, buying property, feel free to reach me on the number posted below, and we'll be happy to help where we can. Now, back to the topic of the day. As I said earlier, it can be very difficult to imagine what leads a person to die by suicide. There may have been no clear warning. In fact, in many cases, it turns out there were not even a single warning signs of these suicidal thoughts. And if the person was a friend or a family member, you may wonder what clues you may have missed. In fact, many of us often wonder, when suicide occurs, is this a matter of selfishness? Is it a question of lack of mental fortitude? Or what else is going on? Because this is one of those things that is really hard to wrap your head around if you've never been on that spot. There are so many people out there who struggle with suicide, have dealt with it successfully, but many of us have no clue what that is. And if you're one of those people who's lucky in that sense, I hope you approach this issue with no judgment at all. Because again, for some reason, it just feels like the suicide rate in the last 10 years, again, has been a lot more than it was when I first moved to the US. In fact, it feels like just among the Kenyans in diaspora, the rates have exponentially gone up. Some of it you may hear about, some of it you may not hear about. And so if you ever wondered, why do people die by suicide? It's important to know that oftentimes many factors combine to lead a person to the decision to take their own life. People don't just wake up and commit suicide. So here's a couple of things that I want you to consider if this is an issue you're thinking about, or you know somebody who is dealing with these kinds of concerns. So number one, that sometimes suicide can just be an issue of somebody crying out for help. In fact, sometimes people attempt suicide not because they really want to die, no, but because they simply don't know how to get help. And so this is one phenomenon that I believe is called parasuicide. Unfortunately, with this, some people go out trying to cry for help, and unfortunately, they end up succeeding in killing themselves. So not everybody who is attempting suicide is doing so because they want to die. No. Other folks arrive at this part because of all kinds of mental health. In fact, there's studies that show that about 31% of people with major depressive disorder have attempted suicide at some point in their lives. So all kinds of mental health conditions can contribute. But remember, we are talking about a combination of multiple factors in many cases. And then you have folks who have dealt with very traumatic events, whatever that may be, whether you're talking about childhood sexual abuse, rape, physical abuse, trauma from war, or people. These folks are often at a much greater risk of suicide happening. So you want to be aware of things like that. And then there's a group of folks who arrive at this part through substance abuse and simply being impulsive. And unfortunately, drugs and alcohol can, in some ways, influence someone who is feeling suicidal, making them more impulsive and thus more likely to act upon their urges than they would otherwise when they were sober. So I'm not necessarily saying that these catalysts, but if somebody is already experiencing suicidal thoughts and then they have access to drugs, it's more likely that they might end up making an impulsive choice that they would not otherwise make when sober. There are many people who end up attempting suicide because of a loss or even simply fear of loss. A person may decide to take their own life when facing a loss or the fear of a loss. This situation may include just some examples that I'm going to list down here. I've seen people do this when they're facing academic failure, especially kids who live in environments that are very tough and unforgiving and less accepting of failure. And so when they worry about disappointing their families, I've seen kids go as far as attempting suicide. Other folks get to this point because there's a chance they might be arrested or imprisoned, especially when they've done something really serious, they're being investigated, and they're looking at the prospect of ending up in jail. There are people who end up just deciding, hey, there's no way I'm going to jail, I'm just going to check it out. For younger kids, there's a lot of this happening as a result of bullying. Some of that simply talking about cyberbullying, shaming, or just humiliation. And believe you me, middle school in America is brutal on our kids. I have never seen the kinds of things that I've seen in schools here in the US. I know there was bullying in high school in Kenya whenever there, but middle school kids in America are just on another level. Some people end up committing suicide because of financial problems or when relationships end, especially with significant or romantic ones, when they lose jobs, or just losing acceptance in certain communities or losing social status. So things like that, even though they may seem small in some people's eyes, they may be world changing for some people. And of course, these losses may be tied to hopelessness. When a person gets to a point where they ask themselves, what's the point? Why would I continue living? And so hopelessness, either in the short term or as a long-term lasting trait, has been found in many studies to really contribute to suicidal thoughts. So I hope you never get there, and if you do, remember there is always help. Now, there are folks who have dealt with medical issues who live with chronic pain and illnesses. Some of these folks look around and they're like, the kind of life they're leading with their illnesses may not be worth what it is. And so they decide, hey, I'm going to check out. So chronic pain and illness can also contribute to that. And in some ways, some of these people feel that they're simply a burden to others when they cannot care for themselves. Every single waking hour is miserable. They may just decide, this is it for me. I can't keep going on. Then there are also folks who really experience significant isolation. And particularly in diaspora community, this happens to folks who have done things that are not approved within the community, like a divorced woman. Sometimes in some communities, people get ostracized to the point where they feel, what's the point? Why are we doing this? And so here are some of the suggestions that are offered there, how you can respond when you realize there's a person who potentially is suicidal. So number one, always pay attention. Recognize the warning signs of depression and suicide risk. In many cases, it turns out that the warning signs are just there. We just simply ignore them. Even though I acknowledge sometimes we just the signs were just not visible to us. And again, please don't ask why. This just oftentimes just encourages defensiveness. Number two, please take suicidal statements seriously and trust your instinct. Whenever you see a sign or when somebody communicates that they're in danger, don't ever ignore them. Get involved. Use active listening. Encourage the person to seek professional help, because again, you may not be qualified to handle these very difficult issues. So please always seek professional help. Now, while directly asking about suicide may be scary, the person you are concerned about sometimes just needs you to ask, do you feel so badly you're thinking about suicide? Ask. Sometimes it's okay, ask. If the answer is yes, please take the person's response seriously and continue asking the suicide risk assessment questions so you can figure out how to best respond. Because some of these things often require emergency response. So if the person is in crisis and has possibly taken some form of life-threatening action or is at risk of taking a life-threatening action, get help immediately. Don't wait. Well, friends, I hope this was informative for you guys. I hope you'll be okay. And let's meet back in the next video. Thank you.